right, our next
Final school.
team. My personal least favorite team in all of college football.
I gotta say one thing before we talk about them.
Oh,
Fuck Toledo.
Tuck Toledo.
All right, hello, welcome back to another episode of the Fourth and Long-Winded Podcast. This is episode number 8. We're gonna get into the MAC West later today. Cody, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Got a lot of stuff done this past weekend.
Yeah.
You all can see there's some packages in those of you that are watching on YouTube, some packages and new shelving in my office. My fiance Brooke has started a little business where she sells things.
Very nice.
She's shipping them around the country, so that's kind of neat. And I helped her put up these shelves. I'm essentially a carpenter now.
It's like Jesus.
Yeah, I am Jesus, essentially.
All right. Before we get into the video and the podcast, we want to make sure to remind you to like, comment, and subscribe to the video if you're watching, and give us a review wherever you're listening. Also, follow us on Twitter at 4 and Long-Winded, and both Cody and Mai's Twitter will be in the description.
We have a Facebook as well,
and a Facebook. Forgot about that. Facebook, find us there too. But let's get into the news from the past week. Got a couple things to hit on. First off, we're going to talk about some of the spring game action we saw this past week. We got to see Bryce Young make his Alabama debut. He looked pretty solid in the Alabama game. He's the former 5-star recruit, potential Tua and Mac Jones continuation. Just keep.
Are we surprised that he was good?
No. I feel old. Marvin Harrison Jr. caught a touchdown pass for Ohio State. I remember growing up watching Marvin Harrison Sr. For the Colts, just dominating, and now his son's catching touchdowns for Ohio State. But Cody, you went to the UC spring game the other day.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so, I mean, everyone that watches or literally knows me knows I'm a really big UC fan. And
University of Cincinnati, if you're not, if you don't know what UC is.
Yeah, University of Cincinnati. So I went to the UC spring game, and I had a lot of fun personally, and I think I had a lot of fun because I was a fan. I'm really interested in football. But I will say the experience was a little lacking in what I think they could be doing and what I wish they were doing. They had a lot of recruits on campus, which I think is a big thing. And the coach was really hanging out with them and showing them how he calls plays. And you could see that. And that was pretty cool to see, as a fan on the field, you could see him talking to them. And I think that that's a big deal. However, I think that maybe the athletic department and support of the football team kind of dropped the ball a little bit. There were a lot of fans there for a spring game where the weather in Cincinnati was not that great. It was a little rainy. There was probably about 5,000 people there. But it didn't feel like a game environment, which from what I understand, most of these games really do feel like a game environment. It's just watching a scrimmage. And I understand that in these scrimmages, there's supposed to be stoppages of play where the coaches can coach them up because it is also a practice for them. But, they should have had an announcer that's going to announce players' names and things like that. So, the recruits out on the field are going to see, oh, wow, that's what it feels like to actually be at a game for this team because they didn't get to go to games last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was kind of a missed opportunity. And also for the casual fan who I know a lot of names on the roster, but I don't know every name. And so I basically was excited to see the backup quarterback who was a 4-star out of Cincinnati. I was excited to see him, and he actually performed better than Desmond Ritter, which was
quarterback controversy.
I don't think so. I don't think so. He performed better in the long ball, but Desmond Ritter was more efficient running the ball and on short plays. So I think Desmond Ritter's the guy moving forward for this year.
Yeah,
But,
I don't see a situation where they don't start him.
yeah, there's no way that they don't. He's at this point. I think he's a sixth year,
Yeah.
and you can't trade that level of experience for anything. Now, granted,
Well,
if
and he was like
starts-
a down. He was like a down. But he might have. Did he receive Heisman votes at all last year?
I don't think he did.
Like fifth place votes or
He
anything
might.
like that?
It might have been like, yeah, like
He had a good year. He had a really
yeah,
good
he had
year.
a great
last
year. At one point, he was through a 6-game stretch, I believe. He was as productive. He was the most productive quarterback since Lamar Jackson. Through I think it was the last 6-game stretch of the regular season. He was the most productive quarterback since Lamar Jackson was his Heisman year.
Wow.
And no one has been that productive on the ground and in the air.
Not even Kyler Murray. That's kind of surprising me.
No. It was, but it was through like a 6-game stretch, not a season.
Yeah.
I think Kyler Murray probably has matched Lamar Jackson, but it's an impressive little tidbit. I'm looking forward to seeing the team. I'd love to see the offense take a little bit of a step forward from last year. But I know you all came to talk about the MAC West and not Cincinnati. I kind of just get into it.
Just hijacked the segment.
I did.
Just trying to talk about news here.
I got a neat poster. It's like black, matte black with the glossy black, and that's the only print on it with the team schedule. It looks really.
So it's all just black.
Yeah, it's all black, but like you can very clearly see the difference because it's
Might need to send me a
very
picture of that.
different textures. And then I got in 2009, UC had the best season that they've ever had, 12-0 to begin the season. And then Brian Kelly left, but in the final game of the season, they played number 15 Pitt. Going in, I think they were ranked 6th at Pitt. It was a sold-out stadium in the snow. And on the final play of the game, Tony Pike threw to a corner touchdown route and hit his receiver, and they made a bobblehead to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of that in 2019. And so I got one of those, and I've wanted one. It has the radio announcers it has a button you can press, and you can hear the radio announcement of the touchdown. And it's pretty neat.
Nice. All right. Well, that's going to be it for the episode today. I'm just kidding.
Sounds good to me.
No, we're still talking about news. So I have 3 more news topics to hit. Eddie George was announced as the new head coach for Tennessee State. And he actually announced that he's targeting Hugh Jackson to be his offensive coordinator.
Okay.
I enjoy this movement of former players taking up these jobs at these HBCUs and putting them on, and like now you know about them and like, I'm going to watch it because Eddie George is there. Like,
yeah, I do too. I think
it's only a good thing.
It's a solid marketing move for the universities, and it's probably going to work for them in the
yeah. NCAA officially adopted the new transfer rule, which allows players to be immediately eligible for all sports, all D1 sports. They don't have to sit out a year or anything.
Does that overrule? Do you know if that overrules conferences rules about transferring?
I do not.
I don't think it does.
I don't know.
A lot of conferences are doing away with that rule.
I know ACC
has.
Yeah.
I believe the SEC has. I know the American has, and the MAC has.
Yeah.
The interconference things, but I don't know if that's something we may have to follow up on.
I have mixed emotions about all this transferring that's become the normal thing, the transfer portal and the yearly discussion. I firmly believe that players should be able to fucking play wherever they want. Like, you should be, if the coaches can leave after 1 year, or like you went to the school because for this coach and he's gone after a year and you're not allowed to leave. I don't think that's right. I do think there should be a limitation to this. I don't think we should have Tate Martell situations where he's on his like 5th school now,
Right.
in 4 years. And I think the best rule would be you can immediately transfer, but you can only do it one time.
And then you have to sit out a year.
And then you have to sit out a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you should just be able to be jumping off. I don't think that's really good for the players, because you're establishing this routine of just like changing every year.
Right.
We're at a development stage. I don't know.
So I actually don't think it's that big of an issue. And the reason I don't think it's that big of an issue is these coaches are adapting to it really well. Do I think it probably hurts the players a little bit, because if their ultimate goal is to get to the NFL, not showing commitment and transferring 2 or 3 times, like transferring once, it makes sense. You had something going on. There was a situation. The coach isn't there. Everyone needs a change. But I think that, if you're going to transfer 2-3 times, you're probably not going to get drafted very high at all, because NFL teams are going to be like, well, is he going to be committed to us?
Yeah.
Is he going to be a problem in the locker room, because they can't really ask any of his coaches like, hey, how's he in the locker room? Well, I don't know. He was only there a season.
Yeah.
So that's something that they have to think about. So it's a double-edged sword for me. Is I think they should be allowed to, but also there's probably going to be things that happen if you do
Yeah.
it.
One final thing quickly, and it was more kind of just interesting. Boston College and New Balance announced a 10-year fair
I'm
deal.
excited to see them wearing dad shoes on the field.
Yeah. I don't ever remember New Balance making NFL uniforms or college football uniforms or really anything. So I'll be interested to see what they come up with from a design perspective. I think you got some good colors to work with there at Boston College.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it kind of puts me it's not as weird, because they do have some athletic stuff, New Balance does, but
yeah.
I mean, UConn, I think at one year was sponsored by Abercrombie. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Abercrombie.
I'm gonna look that up in the break. We're gonna talk about the MAC West here coming up. All right.
Welcome back. Brief correction on that last little bit of statement in the break. We looked it up. It was actually Aeropostale that
it was 100% true.
Did the uniforms for UConn when they were transferring into the FBS.
Very interesting. I learned something new today. But today we're going to be talking about the MAC West and our state of the conference. The MAC conference is something very close to both of our hearts.
Yes.
As BG, and just growing up in Ohio, MAC there's 5 schools in Ohio.
Yeah.
No, 6 schools in Ohio that are in the MAC. But we're going to talk about the West Division first. Not even arguably, they are the better division.
It's the best division.
We're going to start with the lowest ranked in the recruiting class for 2021 for just the MAC West, because they're not the lowest overall. It's Western Michigan, and they're actually 7th overall in the conference out of 12 teams.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
The worst team in the West is the 7th best. That's sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot to say about the MAC East. That'll be next week.
If you've ever seen a garbage fire.
So Western Michigan's got the 98th ranked class for 2021. It's kind of right where they've been the last 4 years. 5 years ago, which I believe was PJ Fleck's first year, they were 67th.
Yeah, and last year they were 87th. So I mean, 87th to 98th. That's not
same general ballpark.
Yeah, general ballpark. They were 3rd last year in the overall MAC, and and they're not for next year. They don't currently have a ranking, so they have no recruits for the 2022 class. They have 19 commits, 17 3-stars, which is pretty solid for a MAC program. And in 2020, they finished 4-2, 2nd in the MAC West. And I actually looked at their schedule. Would you like me to tell you a little bit about what I thought about their schedule?
Yeah, sure.
So I think they have a pretty tough 2021 schedule.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they started off 1-3 to start the year because it looks rough.
Yeah. They got 3 tough opponents. They play
Yeah.
at Michigan to open the season at the Big House. Then they get the FCS opponent in Illinois State.
Yep.
And then they go at Pitt in the Heinz Field. And then they host San Jose State, who I know we talked about in the 2020, our first ever episode, the 2020 FBS recap, how great and underrated a story San Jose State was last year. They were really good. They went undefeated, I'm pretty sure, and won their conference for like it's the best season ever, basically. So that'll be a tough game. Yeah.
So San Jose State ended up losing to Ball State. It was their lone loss of the season. And so I think that game is a bit of a toss-up for Western, but I think it could be a tough beginning of the season. And then they get Buffalo at Buffalo, and they were the MAC East champions. And despite the MAC East being pretty bad, I think Buffalo is at the top of the MAC East, and I think
Buffalo is really good.
I think they're going to be good next year. And then they get Ball State the next week, who was the MAC West champion last year. And then they get Kent State, a little bit of a break. I think that Kent State's offense could cause them some problems because they're flash fast is what they are. And then they're at
they can't
Toledo.
Read.
So that is a rough start to the MAC schedule. The MAC really did not like Western this year.
Yeah.
The guys at the central offices in Cleveland were like, you know what? How can we fuck the people in Kalamazoo? Screw them. But then towards the end, they have kind of an easier schedule. Central's no cupcake, Central Michigan, but then they've got Akron, Eastern Michigan, and NIU, who those games are all winnable. I don't see how this team gets past 6-6 though.
I think that's fair, and I mean, when you play a non-conference schedule like that, you're already starting on the back foot. If you're basically, like we said, they're going to be 1-3. So like 6-6 could be 5-3 in the MAC, and that's pretty decent, I think. So these MAC schools, you're not really comparing them to Big 12 school. Like you're comparing them to themselves a lot of the time.
And I think so. And Western Michigan doesn't have a history of winning.
They do over the last 7 to 10 years.
Yes. Over the last quite a few years. I think
it's like 7 straight.
They've been one of the better teams in the MAC West. But prior to that, I don't think they had ever won a MAC championship. Maybe one.
Well, that's because Marshall won them all back in the 90s.
Right. And so I don't know. It's gonna be a tough go for them this year.
I think I'm a little bit more optimistic because I do think they have a good head coach Tim Lester. He was a Western Michigan quarterback back in the 90s. He played in the XFL. He was the Syracuse OC and the QB coach, and he was actually the Purdue quarterback coach back in 2016.
Interesting.
They do have a very good offense, very balanced, very efficient. They finished 16th nationally last year. In total yards per game.
Right.
And they played, I feel like I remember them last year. They played like 3 or 4 just crazy games. Like I think they were involved in the fake spike game. I think they were the one that threw the fake spike, and then
I think the fake spike for a touchdown against Toledo.
Yeah, they won that one.
I was a big fan of Western for that.
And then were they the team Ball State was playing when there was that they kicked it off and then they did a bunch of laterals and they ran up the field, but like there was a foul. Was that Western Michigan versus Ball State? I don't know. I feel like they played a lot of crazy games. I think they were a lot better. They still went 4-2, so I mean they had a good year. I think I'm just more optimistic.
I guess I'm just looking at it from an overall perspective. I think starting off so rough could be mentally taxing for the team. And
that's what MAC schools do every year.
I'm just hoping that they don't give up on the rest of the season. Like maybe you lose your first 2 MAC games and it's like, well, the season's done. Like I hope they don't do that because they have potential to have a decent year.
All right, I got
Do
nothing
you have
else
anything
on
else on
Western.
Western?
Nope. Let's move on to Eastern.
All right. Eastern Michigan. We've talked about Eastern Michigan Stadium, talked about some of their struggles as a program. But I actually feel pretty good about Eastern Michigan.
What was the name that they have on their stadium? The blank what factory?
The Factory.
The Factory. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember, but it was. I knew it was
I'm gonna
something
go play Eastern Michigan at the Factory.
So ridiculous.
So here's my thing about. I actually feel kind of optimistic about Eastern Michigan.
I do too.
They're ranked 5th in the West in recruiting this year, 6th in the MAC, 107th last year nationally, 96th this year. So that's an improvement.
It's a big improvement over the last 5 years. They've been consistently
they've been improving consistently.
Yeah.
And I think I'll talk about kind of Eastern Michigan's whole shtick. I'm not sure what year it was, but I want to say it was 2007, during the beginning of like the financial crisis. Eastern Michigan was cutting programs at the school, and the faculty senate voted to recommend to the university that they cancel the football program. I may be wrong about that year. It could have been earlier. I'd like to maybe look that up real quick.
Yeah. I mean, so the current head coach is Chris Creighton. He's been there for a couple of years now, or 7 seasons now, more than a couple of years. But before he was hired, they were pretty freaking terrible. They had no winning seasons. They hadn't had a winning season since 1995. It
was like 30.
They hadn't made a bowl game since 1987.
Yeah.
Now they've made 3 bowls in 7 seasons under Creighton. 3 out of 7 for a MAC team is pretty good, I'd say. His name has even been tossed into the ring for the Kansas job because he's known as a program builder. So I'm very optimistic on where they are and where they're going. I think they're going to continue to be competitive, continue to build the program, and maybe eventually be able to afford to update the stadium, maybe give it a different name, maybe change it from the Factory to something else.
Well, so I mean, they've been upgrading it and doing things to it, but I think the problem is they can't fill it. It's too big for their needs.
Yeah.
And it looks weird. And as a fan,
this is the one that's like 10 minutes from Michigan, isn't it?
Yeah, it's literally a 15-minute drive from the big house.
Yeah. So I guess you're always gonna have a ceiling on this school then, but I think maybe they're approaching it right now. Maybe they went 2-4 this past year, but they've had 2 winning seasons in the last 5 years. Put it in perspective, it's way better than what they were the previous 30 years.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not being able to find when the faculty recommended that, but it was
it goes to the point. Like, it was pretty close to dying.
Like, this program is in a much better position than they were. Yeah. Their schedule next year, they've got St. Francis out of Pennsylvania in the FCS to start the season at Eastern Michigan. Then they go to Wisconsin, which is going to be a big L. And then they've got UMass at home, or they're at UMass. So that should be a dub. UMass should
former MAC team
football. And then they have Texas State, which I think Texas State's, based on our previous thing, they should be better this year. So I mean, that may be a toss-up, but I think Eastern should be better.
I think Eastern should be. Texas State's the one that was like 183rd recruiting, but they have like 10 transfers.
Yeah, the transfers. So I mean, we'll see. They get Ball State at home, which is really nice because that's kind of one of your tougher opponents. And they don't draw Buffalo out of the East, which is really nice.
They do have to have the treacherous back-to-back away games on the I-75. They play at Bowling Green and then at Toledo the following week.
Right.
Nobody ever gets out of that alive, you know.
Yeah. So we'll see kind of what happens there. But I don't know.
They're in a better place. They're in a much better
place. In a better place.
Yep. All right. You want to move on to Ball State?
Yeah.
The Fighting David Lettermans.
Yeah, good old testicle tech. So Ball State, their recruiting rank was 95th nationally, 4th in the MAC West. Their previous year was 123rd, so their recruiting class was awful. And they were 9th in the MAC. They've got 23 commits, 15 3-stars, the rest 2-stars. Ball State kind of surprised me this past year. I didn't expect them to be good. I really think it was probably coaching more than anything. So I'm hoping that is a continued run of success. I think that they have the ability to compete for the MAC West title, and then they could easily beat whoever is in the East.
I think it's kind of reasonable to think that any of these 6 teams in the MAC West could like win the conference in reality. We just don't know.
Yeah, I think it's
Ball State
reasonable to think that there's a couple teams I probably wouldn't put my money on.
But you wouldn't be like, oh, what? What the hell happened? Why did Western Michigan win the
Yeah,
MAC
no,
West?
there's not a single team that if you told me they won, like if you fast forward 6 months and you tell me, this team won, there's not a single team that's going to surprise me.
Yeah.
They're all pretty even keeled, pretty good.
Yeah.
For max standards. So
you mentioned their head coach. I believe it's pronounced New, Mike New.
I think so.
I did some digging into him. He played. So there's a lot of like former players as coaches in the MAC. He played quarterback at Ball State back in the 90s, sort of like how
when he played? Was it under like Brady Hoke?
Quarterback. I think it was like 99 to 02 or something like that. I don't know for sure, but what I was gonna say is he was on the Saints staff actually right before the New Orleans Saints, the NFL. Right. He was on the staff as QB coach. So he worked with Drew Brees pretty closely, Sean Payton pretty closely. So, and he's been in this job for 3 or 4 years now, I think. Maybe 5. I think he's going into his 5th year. But he's improved over year. His first 3 years were all losing, including a 2-10 record. They went 5-7 in 2019, and now they're 7-1 in 2020. So I do think he's a good coach. I don't think he's going to last there very long if he continues the way he's going, especially with his ties to Sean Payton and the Saints in the NFL. Like, he's got a good pedigree. I think he's a good coach. Proved it last year with this team.
He was there in the 90s at Ball State
ranking.
So he was there in the 90s.
You're like cutting in and out.
Yeah, my internet is unstable.
Okay. All right.
So hopefully it gets more stable. Do you want to talk about our next team?
Yeah.
Did you
want to touch on their schedule at all? Because we
didn't talk about Ball State's schedule.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Can you not hear me? It's all right. We're talking about their schedule. We're on the same page at least. We said it at the same time.
Cool. They got Western Illinois.
My favorite nickname, the Leatherbacks.
Yeah, that's solid.
The Western Illinois Leathernecks. Or Leatherbacks, sorry. At Penn State, at Wyoming.
Oof. Yeah. I don't think they win at Wyoming.
Josh Allen has anything to say about it.
I just think Wyoming's a hard place to play with the altitude and the winds. It's windy.
Well, then why doesn't the Wyoming Cowboys win the national championship every year?
I don't know, man. Maybe because they lose their away games.
Okay. Fair enough. They just need to schedule all home games. Why haven't they thought about that?
Yeah, right.
Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois.
Well, you also have Army in the non-conference for Ball State.
Yeah.
That's an interesting matchup.
I can only get excited about Army and Navy for the Army Navy game. I
love watching Army. I think
otherwise.
they're really interesting to watch, and Ball State's gonna get pounded by them, in my opinion.
Oh, okay.
But
Fair enough.
I'm betting Army with the points.
Okay. So you're not brave enough to take the money line straight up. Like you want the points of safety.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Northern Illinois. I can't say Illinois. Illinois. All right. 90th ranked
Northern
class.
Illini.
Yeah. Illinois.
Okay.
90th ranked class. 2021.
90th, third. Yep. Sorry. Talking over you.
Go ahead.
90th and overall, third in the MAC, fourth, or third in the MAC West, fourth overall in the MAC. Their previous year was 92nd, and their previous MAC rank was fourth.
Yeah. So their head coach is actually another former player for the school. Northern Illinois former running back Thomas Hammock is their head coach. He worked with the Ravens these past 5 years. Actually, he was the Ravens. Isn't he? Yeah, he started in 2019, so he's going into his third year. Kind of been a rough last 2 years, especially for Northern Illinois standards from the past
last year. Yeah. I think he's kind of on the hot seat.
I'm going to give him a little bit more benefit. I think we'll see what he does this year, and then I'll probably be willing to say that with you. But I think this is his first head coach ever. This is his first head coaching job he's ever had. He was in the NFL as a running back coach, and he also worked at Wisconsin and Minnesota before that. Like I said before, they're 0-6 last year and 5-7 year before. They were pretty much the best MAC team for the last 10 years. They had 11 or more wins for every season from 2010 to 2014.
Yep.
But I'd say they're probably the weakest in this Western Conference this West Division at this point.
I tend to agree with you. I think also they kind of have a tough schedule to start the year with. Like they're at Georgia Tech, they're at Michigan, they've got Wyoming, which I think they could win that game, but I think
Wyoming got them at home. They don't have to
it's at that's why it's at Northern Illinois. So I think Wyoming could put up a fight, but we'll see. And then they have Maine, so more than likely they're going to be 2-2 starting the season. And then they got Eastern and Toledo before they played Cupcake Bowling Green. RIP. And then they get Central, Kent, Ball State, and Buffalo. I mean, that's kind of a tough schedule.
Yeah.
Especially having Buffalo and Ball State back to back. And
that whole end of the season.
Yeah. And they have to go to
at
Buffalo.
Kent State before. Are you what?
Well, I was just saying that they have to go to Buffalo, and Buffalo is kind of one of those stadiums that sucks the life out of you.
Yeah, well, I was just saying they have a tough end of the season completely. Yeah. Like they have to go at Kent State, which is one of the better teams on the east side.
Yep.
They play Ball State, and then at Buffalo, and then Western Michigan. So that's a pretty difficult 4-game stretch to end the season.
Yeah, it's not like they have an easy stretch at any point in the season. They kind of literally
certainly have an easy week. They play Bowling Green. That's
October 16th.
Yes.
But my thing about him saying he's on the hot seat is I think Northern Illinois fans expect more out of their team than most MAC fans do. Like me as a Bowling Green fan, I pretty much expect Bowling Green. My minimum expectations is that every now and then we have an 8-win season. And then most of the time we're going to go 7-6, occasional losing season. Like that's kind of what I expect out of the team. And they're not meeting expectations right now, but we have quite a few MAC championships and conference championships in our program history. Second most in the conference, actually, behind Miami.
I was going to say Marshall.
Miami has more from when they had ancient ass coaches that are dinosaurs. Yeah. I think Northern Illinois should be better than this. Do better.
Okay, fair enough. All right, second to last school we're going to talk about in the West, and it's the second best recruiting class in the West.
I was a little surprised by this one. Not to say Central Michigan is a bad place. Mount Pleasant is a lovely place. Brooks' cousin went there. They've been in the middle of the road of the conference. They're always kind of good, but they're always not great. I don't know when their last MAC championship appearance was.
I do not know. I know they've been kind of up and down average these past 5 years. 3-3 2020, 8-6, 1-11 back in 2018, and then 8-5, 6-7. Their head coach, somebody SEC fans might recognize, is Jim Mcelwain. Former Florida coach, 4 or 5 years ago now, did not work out, obviously, was fired, and now he's found his footing over at Central Michigan, where I think he does contribute to the bump in recruiting. They were 115th last year and they're up to 87th this year. So I think he helps a lot with that. And I don't know, maybe he revitalized his career. He started his career at Colorado State and turned them into a winning program, and Colorado State really hasn't been anything since then. So maybe he can do something with Central Michigan.
Well, it's not absurd to think that Central Michigan can't win and can't do well in the MAC, because Butch Jones somehow won the MAC with Central Michigan. So, and I think he did it like 3 times.
Was that like 2003, 4, 5, something? Like
6, 7, and 9. I think that's when he was there at
before he took. Would that be before he took the UC job, right?
Yeah.
Is that where?
So actually, 2006 was Brian Kelly. Then in 2007, he took the UC job, and Butch Jones took over. Won again and then won 2 MAC championships in 3 years. And Brian Kelly left Cincinnati, and Butch Jones took over at Cincinnati.
So what we're saying is Butch Jones is the next Notre Dame head coach.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And if history repeats itself, Notre Dame, you will not have a good time.
So how's this? So Brian Kelly and Notre Dame have a downturn in form over these next couple of years. Butch Jones is at Arkansas State now. Is that where he's at?
Uh-huh.
So he gives Arkansas State, like, I don't know, 10-win seasons in a row, and he gets hired as Notre Dame head coach.
Yeah. And then after 3 seasons, he's fired as Notre Dame.
Yeah. After failing to live up to Brian Kelly's name, never actually succeeding as much as he did.
Yep.
Except for Central Michigan, I guess. He did win.
He did a little better.
You want to talk about their schedule a little bit? They got a couple exciting games at Missouri, at LSU. Those are probably 2 losses.
Yep.
Robert Morris, and then kind of an underrated fun game. FIU, they play at home. FIU's
that is a fun one.
We'll talk about them when we talk about Conference USA, but
yeah, that is kind of a fun one. It's at
evenly matched teams.
Yeah, evenly matched teams. It'll still be warm up in Michigan then. So I think that FIU doesn't have the warmness like going from Florida to Michigan. They don't lose anything.
They don't have to play in snow, which they've never.
They do pull Miami, who Miami is probably my pick to win the East. So that's going to be a tough game.
Both those games, I think two of the 3 possible MAC East contenders, I think, are Miami and Ohio.
And Kent.
And Kent, but I guess there's 4 then. I was going to say Buffalo, but
Yeah. Well, I don't think they have Buffalo on the schedule.
no, but I'm talking like they open up with 2 of the tougher teams in the East on the road at Miami and at Ohio. And then they get into their own division. But
well, and we're talking tough teams. Like I was
this is all within the
Western
MAC.
Michigan. Like, oh, that's a tough schedule. And it's like, y'all have to remember this is relative because the MAC is bad.
Yeah.
Like generally, just the MAC is bad.
Yes.
But it's so much fun.
Yes.
It's such fun football. It's
Maction.
so bad. It's like watching a really slow motion train wreck.
Yes.
Okay.
Or fireworks. You never know what you're going to see. They don't play 2 of the 2 worst teams in the conference though, so they might have statistically the toughest schedule because they don't play Bowling Green and Akron, who would just so that makes it a little bit more tough.
It does, yeah.
Most other teams play either one of those, at least one of those 2, which is basically just a guaranteed win unless you are just completely stupid.
Dubs.
Yeah.
All right, our next
final school
team, my personal least favorite team in all of college football.
I gotta say one thing before we talk about them.
Oh,
fuck Toledo.
Tuck Toledo. As
all right, we can start.
Mary Ellen Maisie would say.
Very highly ranked compared to its fellow MAC schools in recruiting. They're 68th for the 2021 season.
Yes, number 1 in the MAC, number 1 in the MAC West. The previous national rank was I have them as 115. Did I write that down wrong?
I have it as last year in the 2020 it was 73rd.
Oh yeah, then I wrote it down wrong. I wrote it down.
They've been consistently kind of they're up from the past couple years. 73rd, 74th, 67th.
Jason Candle is doing a really good job. I think he worked under Iowa State's head coach
Matt Campbell.
I think he worked under Matt Campbell when Matt Campbell was at Toledo. And so he's kind of like a disciple of him, kind of a program builder. Not that Matt Campbell left Toledo in a bad position, but Jason Candle's really been able to keep the program kind of steady humming.
Kept the rocket going.
Yeah, around the top of the MAC. Their facilities are their stadium's really nice. It's definitely the nicest stadium in the MAC. By far, it's definitely the nicest stadium in the MAC. They have just natural benefits that the other MAC schools don't have, besides maybe Northern Illinois, in that Toledo is located in kind of a major city. I mean, Toledo's not a huge city, but you get quality recruits. Comparatively, it's a big city compared to every other city in the MAC. Like
Miami. You ever been to Athens, Ohio?
Yeah, like Miami can sometimes draw kids from Cincinnati, which is Cincinnati's kind of a hotbed for recruiting, but they're not drawing
Buffalo.
The top kids out of the area. Buffalo, maybe, yeah, but if you're a Buffalo and you're good, you're probably going to a bigger school. You're not going to the MAC. At Buffalo, because Buffalo isn't a traditionally power program either. Toledo's had success nationally, success regionally, and so they have those kind of natural advantages. And so I think Toledo is probably always going to be one of those teams that's looking to be in the MAC championship game. Granted, they haven't actually won the West all that often.
They actually haven't made a bowl game in the last 2 years.
Yeah, so
they're a little bit down, actually.
A little bit down, but I don't think that that's actually indicative of how good the team is. I think that's maybe a little bit more representative.
No, Toledo's good.
Yeah, they're good. They're a good team.
Yeah. You can touch on their schedule. They do have an exciting game. They play at Notre Dame. At Notre Dame, the second
exciting
week of the
for
season.
Notre Dame.
Yeah. At least it's the best MAC team going there. So like at least they're gonna give it the best the MAC's got.
Right,
Or at least one of
right.
the best MAC teams.
Yeah. They've got Colorado State at home. I don't know how Toledo manages to draw these like. Colorado State's not like a big team, but I would say that Colorado State's probably like a little bit bigger than Toledo.
I disagree with you. I think Toledo is more recognizable if you just ask some random person, not even in Ohio. Like if you just went to somebody in
Maybe.
South Carolina and was like, what do you know more for football? Colorado State or Toledo? I'm probably gonna say neither, but if they were gonna say anybody, I'd say it's Toledo.
Yeah, I think that that's probably that's a fair judgment. I just think like Colorado State has made so many investments in their program. Like their new stadium is beautiful. And they've got like a lot of money that a lot of G5 programs don't have. And I consider the Mountain West to be like one of the better conferences in the G5. Actually, I consider it to be the second best in the G5.
Wait a second.
Traditionally, Sun Belt.
Call you out.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Sorry, Sun Belt.
I was gonna have to call you out. We just did a Sun Belt
Sorry,
episode.
Sun Belt. But especially when it comes to money, they're definitely the second biggest money earners in the conference. So that's kind of where I'm thinking. But a few years ago, Cincinnati played at Toledo and never played at Cincinnati. So I'm just like very curious how Toledo is able to draw these teams to play at Toledo. Like I think Missouri came and played at Toledo recently. And how?
Yeah, that's weird.
Like, how are you getting these teams? Like, it was an SEC team at Toledo. How are you getting these teams to come play you? And I think maybe it's because their stadium's actually pretty freaking nice.
That was the first thought that came to my head. But then I was like, do you really say, yeah, sure, we'll come play you just because your stadium's nice? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if that's actually something that goes through an AD's head or something whenever they're making a schedule.
I don't know. Because I think the game happened in 2014. Yeah. It happened
well, even didn't BG have a bigger, wasn't like Indiana or something?
Indiana came and played them, yeah. But like, I think BG's games like that are fewer and far between. It feels like to me.
Fair enough.
And honestly, at the time, Indiana wasn't really like a great program. Like I would consider Missouri to be a much better program than Indiana, even
at that point. I'd reverse that now.
I would reverse that now. Yeah, but yeah, because Missouri was ranked 24th.
When they went to Toledo.
Yeah.
Well, see, I wonder because Toledo was even a lot better at that point too. Like,
yeah,
they were like being ranked occasionally, and like,
yep.
So I wonder if it was just kind of the thing, like we kind of need to prove ourselves, and this is a good team.
Yeah. And I think the MAC has fallen a lot over the last few years. I think the MAC had some respect when Northern Illinois was winning all those games.
Even farther back, like consistently
they were having ranked teams, like 2 or 3 ranked teams. They were one of the better G5 team or conferences, but it's fallen so far.
Yeah,
their bowl games are consistently awful. I think last year Ball State was the only team to win a game, and I think the year before they didn't win a single game in the bowl season.
And it's also like when you think of some of like the worst teams in FBS college football, you immediately go to a couple MAC schools now, and I don't remember that being the case. That way. No, like you immediately go, okay, Akron and Bowling Green. I can put those two up against just about any other team in college football, and they might be worse.
Yeah, I agree. So it doesn't leave you too optimistic about the conference's future, other than just being rated for coaches.
And Maction, man. Midweek Maction.
They have to play on a Wednesday night at 9 p.m. in order to be seen.
That's the only way normal conscience will ever, like, people in California will ever know who the hell Akron is.
Yep. But
So I understand.
I love it. I love Maction.
Yeah.
I'm excited to watch a random game on a Tuesday night. It makes me happy. It gets me through the week.
You know what else I love about the MAC is the color combinations
They're
for each
fantastic.
school and the
Fire.
uniforms.
Fire.
There's so many cool uniforms in the MAC.
Yeah.
I love it. There's a variance. It's not like you have 3 teams that are 4 teams that are all like red and white. I don't know. There's a variance.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dan, do you have anything else to say about Toledo? We kind of went on a rant about them playing Missouri, but I think that
keep it in.
They're a quality team. They're probably going to be at the top of the MAC.
I agree. Well, let's make a quick pick. If you had to guess right now, who's winning the MAC West to close out the episode?
I think I'll put $10 on Central Michigan.
Okay. I was gonna actually go with Central Michigan, but
okay, well then fine. I'll put $5 on Ball State.
That was who I was gonna go with second. I'm gonna take Eastern Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Chris Creighton.
You're gonna lose that.
All right. Well, you took my first 2 picks, so.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening.
We'll talk about the MAC East next week. Stay tuned.